All right, welcome back from that. And of course, it's exactly that's 35 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. And of course, Zabu just made your trading experience much more easier and friendly as you just dial *292# and you will be availed with quite a number of options. You can choose to buy a 5-year bond and of course, or a company stock or securities somewhere else, and you will be in position and of course to earn yourself an income. Do something new for yourself, *292#. And that's the magic starts, and you will be in position to buy securities on all techs. Yes, and you earn yourself something for yourself right there. The markets open at exactly 8:15. That's a.m. in the morning, and they close at exactly 3:15 p.m. late in the evening. Oh, that's about afternoon hours, mid-afternoon hours, and that's still in the East African time. So you will be in position to earn yourself some side income, and you can do this at whatever part of the country you will be at, definitely, and you will be in position to earn yourself something, an income, a side income as a person, as a trader, right there, and also getting exposure on how how stock trading really operates. All right, and at this particular time, before we head to the topical discussion, we're going to have an insight regarding food reserves in Uganda. And of course, looking at developing countries, this is something, a very important aspect that they really put in place to ensure that they ensure food security for their individual citizens right there. And of course, the focus, of course, is moved in that perspective, of course, on limitations of wild food reserve to the rules that national food reserves might play in developing countries in that aspect. And of course, a working party has already put, these are parties that are already put in place to ensure that this is something that is incorporated effectively. And of course, like we know, there is quite a wide range of starvation in the world, and most especially, most cases in African countries. And it's quite very sad that the countries which should be the ones in position to feed the rest of the world are the ones that are being fed by these other countries. That is quite unfortunate. So that's why it's very important to really, for Uganda to embrace the aspect of national food reserves and ensure that we keep ourselves ready, of course, for a food crisis that can happen at any time of any time of the year or any years to come, following the current global, of course, crisis that are taking place. Remember, the climate change move is already on the way, and of course, that really poses a great threat regarding that particular aspect. All right, at this particular time, let's get into that particular insight regarding the national food reserve.
Then the first one was okay. Okay, regarding the issue of national food reserves, it's a very interesting thing because it's a global concern. That is why it is a discussion at the World Trade Organizations. Although at the World Trade Organizations, it is referred to, the concept is referred to as public stock holdings, but they are talking about strategic food reserves. At the East African level, we have a commitment to establish and operationalize strategic food reserves. But also the Council of Ministers under the African Union, having looked at the results of the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program report, BINIO report, that Summit considered early this year, they realized that actually so many partner states and member states of the African Union are not meeting the commitments to end hunger, as basic as that. In the East Africa, it was only one country that really met that commitment, and that was Kenya. The rest of us were off track. So the Council of Ministers resolved that actually back home, every country should establish and operationalize and actually finance strategic food reserves. In Uganda, that conversation is not taking place anywhere. We have ever had strategic food reserves, even in the worst governments as they are being referred to. We had strategic food reserves in a good government as it is being referred to. These strategic food reserves were instead privatized. A decision or an action that was very unconstitutional. because the Constitution of Uganda 1995 as amended Principle Objective 22, government of Uganda commits to ensure food security, and then it is stated that government shall establish national food reserves. On the contrary, the national food reserves were privatized instead. This is not something that we are asking for to put a burden to already burden the government and the economy of the country. But this is something that is strategic for our economics, for our social, but also democratic stability. Because in the case of an inflation and a food inflation, just like what we are going through now, governments draw from the national strategic food reserves, the food, basic food, and release it on the market. And that release on the market automatically brings the food prices down for those that can feed themselves. That is number one. So it's an economic tool. You know, the problem, we think that economics is solved by physical tools alone, but strategic food reserves is an economic tool that can help government manage a food inflation, and a food inflation is the most difficult form of inflation for a government, for any government in the world to manage. So when we are confronted with a food crisis, just as we were during COVID-19 2020, and even the Karamoja, and now the Mobende Kasanda, what government does, just as they didn't know, they go to the national coffers and draw more money in the names of supplementary budgets. That is very bad, because one, that is not money planned for, but then two, this government gets on the market where the people buy food from and gets on the same market and buys food. And it is very unfortunate that our government is an expensive buyer. So they go to the market and actually they are buying at a much higher price, making the food inflation even more difficult and trapping more people into the need to be fed. Because when you do that, one, you create inflation, but then two, you reduce on the amount of food in circulation. So even the few or other people that were at the verge but were capable of feeding themselves, then they can't feed themselves. You see? So this is another tool that helps government to be resilient. Because so long as you're a government with people that are supposed to eat every mouth every morning in this country, it is a duty of government that that mouth has fed and has fed adequately. So you cannot wait that for any crisis, then you go into the procedure of going to Parliament to ask for a supplementary budget and draw money from the coffers, go on the market and buy. That's why government ended up being trapped into buying things that looked like food that actually weren't food in 2020 because they were not meeting the minimum standards to be consumed by human beings. So with the strategic food reserves, the government is very sure, one, of the quantity, but also two, the quality. They can trace the sources of this food and they cannot be held their feet flat on the ground just as we were in 2020. It's very unfortunate that something as basic as that, you privatize your strategic food reserves. When you get into the crisis, you go to the same people you sold your reserves to and buy from them money. We are about to develop interest in understanding who actually are holding our food reserves.
Is it true we produce more than?
Very interesting insight right there regarding that's the national food reserves, and something which is very, very, very key in terms of ensuring food securities for the nation's population all are given by the Chula population. It's very interesting that, like I said earlier before, that the nations that we're supposed to feed, they're the ones that are feeding us back simply because they have adapted and mastered the art of saving and storing food, of course, for generations. And of course, this is really seen through keeping the indigenous seeds, yes, storation of seeds, which of course can be planted later in the later seasons, right there, or even putting up stores and put up this food right there, and it's preserved in a way that is quite efficient, that at whatever part of the time when it's needed, it can be put out of the shelves for human consumption. All right. Yesterday was the World Savings Day, that is the 31st of October, and of course Uganda and joins the rest of the countries to be a part of this, and we're going to have an insight regarding that particular aspect, and of course statistics from the Bank of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, that's the UBOS, show that saving habits in Uganda need serious improvement. And of course, with only 54% of Ugandan adults saving about 6,000 shillings, that's according to the 2018 FinScope report. This nation's saving culture is still in its formative years, let me say that. And of course, the World Savings Day offers a wonderful opportunity to emphasize the saving of money. Of course, it's not quite a positive culture in Uganda regarding saving. I think I talked about that before, and of course, many people have their own reasons why they don't save their money. When you move out there on the ground and you meet up the different Ugandans and you simply ask them a question, why aren't you in position to save? Probably they may not be in position to really give you an answer. And of course, some will give you answers, so many. Some don't trust the saving schemes, don't trust these banks where they put the money. I mean, people suspect frauds. You know, when you talk about circles, some don't believe that circles are real. Like I told you earlier, in the report that was released in January of 2021, indicating that out of the about 500 registered circles in Uganda, about 312 face issues of fraud. So that is people's money that is saved, that is being taken away. So definitely that's going to be a very discouraging factor that is not going to allow a normal Ugandan to save. Yet, regardless of the amount of money you save, it never really matters. At the end of the day, one by one, a common saying makes a bundle, but it's very profitable if you really take an initiative to put it into your daily life regarding that. Okay, let's have an insight regarding savings in Uganda. How was it like in Uganda? What events transpired in Uganda? And of course, we shall be returning back and I'll be sharing much more insights regarding the World Savings Day.
The impacts of COVID-19 pandemic showed how important it is to save money for contingencies. Saving money lessens one's economic fragility and helps you deal with uncertainty better. 57% of Ugandans would not be able to maintain their standard of living just after one day of lockdown, according to the 2020 COVID-19 FinScope analysis, which assesses financial service needs and the gaps in financial service availability. After 15 days, a total of 81% would not be able to maintain it. The inadequate saving culture contributes to this lack of financial readiness.
That COVID taught us a lot, but then came the Ukraine and Russia war. We didn't know it was coming. There's so many things that it might be an indicator of a lot more to come. And so we are challenging ourselves, not the public, ourselves and the entire public this year to do this.
Uganda's saving figures look low when compared to other East African countries like Kenya, whose population saves at a rate of 23%, Tanzania at 13%, and Rwanda at 18%. According to statistics, Ugandans have a very poor saving culture.
And there is a level of ignorance, which the Banking and Financial Service Awareness Month will actually tackle. There's the issue of access, which is improved now with mobile money, with agency banking. But there's probably also the issue of attitudes. And again, we are also trying to make sure.
However, in light of the current state of the economy, where the central bank has boosted the central bank rate, saving performance has also decreased. However, the Deputy Governor exhorted Ugandans to save the little they have in order to have a better future.
In a very, very challenging time such as one now, I think we need to sit down and ask ourselves, what can I cut from my expenditure? What can I prioritize? All right? I mean, I'll tell you one thing. The other day, the President said that if the cost of some import items have gone up, and that's some that are locally produced, why don't you substitute those, particularly with credit favorite? That difference, you can save it.
The most recent results of a demand-side survey show that 54%, which represent 10 million of adult Ugandans, save money or set it aside for later use. The majority of those who save, 37%, do so to pay costs like food and school fees, while 26% save for unplanned expenses like illness. In contrast, 46% of Ugandans who do not save said they do not do so because they don't have enough money to pay their bills.
Okay, that's regarding an insight on the World Savings Day, and that's what really took place in the country, Uganda, as of course, Ugandans are urged to really embrace the aspect of saving, which has not been really quite a positive culture amongst them regarding that. So it's very important why as to you need to save as an individual, and of course not only as an individual, even though you started up an enterprise as a company, it's very important for you to have a company account where you can actually keep your daily incomes, your daily savings, so that they can accumulate. After some time, you will be in position to get to know why it's very important. And of course, I did a survey a way back, I think it's about 2 weeks ago. I reached back on ground to the different people and I tried to find out why they're not in position to actually save money. And some of the reasons some people said was that some Ugandans don't save simply because they want to live big. Probably you look at your income versus your expenditure, it doesn't really balance up simply because sometimes we live lives as Ugandans trying to prove a point. So you find that that is not quite realistic when you're not going to be in position to save. You earn probably a small salary, but you want to really spend something way beyond your earnings. And definitely that is not going to support your good living, and it's going to affect you in one way or the other. And of course, and also the aspect of limited trust for financial institutions. And of course, as we see cases, majority of Ugandans have this perspective that banks might close. Yes, probably some have faced some traumas regarding those particular aspects, and it's limiting them to really adopt a saving culture. And also we can look at the aspect of dependence, that depending on looking at the population in Uganda, the working class, there is a high dependency syndrome. You got your salary, but you probably have about 10 people or more than 10 people that are looking up to you to ensure that you spend money on them. So it's something very social in Uganda, and because we are so hospitable and very loving, that we end up giving out money just like that. So that in a way kind of affects the saving culture within the country. So it's very good to be sober as a Ugandan out there. You make sure that you always on point, get to understand where does your money go. And maybe the question is, why would you save money? Of course, you save to invest. Some save to spend. So many various reasons, but I would go by saving to invest, not saving to spend, simply because I know I'm putting that money and it's going to reap back much more money back to me at the end of the day. All right, at this particular time, we're going to get into a commercial break. It's exactly 53 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. Stick around, more business insights coming up.